All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts. I'm Elizabeth Quay. I'm the Deputy Director here at METC. Our November lecture that's clearly happened tonight. We're happy to have Brianna Dagostino here to talk. We're celebrating Native American Heritage Month and looking forward to hearing from her. Thank you all of you also joining on Zoom who got to stay inside on this chilly night, and thanks for all of you for coming out to present in person. We really enjoy having in-person events starting to happen once again. So I'll turn it over to Brianna. Get started.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So Weli Loki, that means good evening. Nule Lindum Ali Pat, that means I'm glad that you all came, both in person and virtually. Delawenzi Brianna, that means my name is Brianna. That is all in Nanticoke Lenni-Lenape language. And to you guys, you know, you might not think anything of it speaking another language. As you know, most of America, we have bilingual people. Except for me, speaking my language means everything, because there was a time that our language was considered a dead language, considered not used anymore. And that was because when settlers came over, we were forced to learn English, my ancestors, so that we could trade, so that we could make treaties, so that we could make America, America. In residential schools, which I'll talk about later, children were forced to learn English as a way to Americanize them. So not just my tribe's language, but many tribes' languages across the United States were lost during that time. So for me to speak my language, that means everything to me. So Wanishi, thank you. So my name is Brianna Dagostino. I'm an alumni at Montclair State University. I helped them create an 18-credit Indigenous Studies minor that actually started this fall. I'm so proud. I'm also a student at Rowan University. Yeah, thank you. I tried. I'm also a student at Rowan University right now in South Jersey, where I'm getting my master's degree in Lenape history to hopefully educate more and more people about my people. So today, for Native American Heritage Month, I'm going to teach you a little bit about my tribe, the Nanticoke Lenape people of South Jersey. And when I mean South Jersey, I mean South Jersey, the Delaware Bay. The Lenape people in historical context are often called the Delawares. That's because we lived on the Delaware Bay. That is still where I live. So we are very South Jersey. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about us today. And I'm also going to teach you guys kind of about the historical struggles that not only my tribe, but many tribes across the country face from back in settlers' times all the way to present day that I think everyone should be aware of. Still working.
Try the other direction. It's I find that corner is not always intuitive.
Technical, not my greatest suit.
Yeah, it's down, unfortunately.
Down?
It doesn't make sense, but it's down.
I might have you be my designated person. I would forget. Okay. So by a show of hands, what has anybody learned or have you even heard about the Nanticoke Lenni-Lenape tribe? See, and this is our issue that I'm trying to change. Can anyone just raise their hand or maybe call out just things that they have learned over time in, you know, class, in school, or just in popular culture about Native Americans in general? Some things that you might have seen. Don't be shy, we're all family here.
They were mistreated.
We're often portrayed in popular culture like Pocahontas as skimpy women who wear these very, very short, I don't even know what she was wearing. Obviously, as you can see, I'm covered up. As you can see in these pictures, these are my family. That's me as a baby. We're covered up. We're not like Pocahontas, even though I wish we could dress like that in the summertime because it's hot, but we're not allowed. Or the Western movies, we're depicted as savages, as these mean people. And yes, we did fight, but also the settlers fought too. It wasn't, you know, one good guy, one bad guy, we all fought. So there's a lot of these stereotypes that are kind of perpetrated around popular culture in the United States. And when I go into schools, especially with children, I have to kind of dispel these stereotypes at a young age to tell them, what they're seeing online isn't necessarily true. What they're reading in history books isn't necessarily true. And a lot of these people that I talk to don't realize that there are over 500 federally recognized tribes in the United States. That's just federally recognized tribes. There's also hundreds of state recognized tribes. My tribe is only a state recognized tribe. And then there are hundreds of unrecognized tribes. And what people don't realize also is that all of these tribes are different. When we read about Native Americans, they're often grouped together as one, being all the same. But just like us, we are not the same. We are all different people. We have different religions. We have different backgrounds. We have different looks about us. And that's how each tribe is. We are not the same. We don't necessarily believe in the same things. We don't do the same things. So that's also something I've had to dispel, especially with younger kids, to make sure that they know what they're learning is accurate information. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to get in a little bit about our tribe and who we are. And I just want to say everything that I have learned has been through my family, through my tribe, through my elders. I haven't learned anything in the textbook first. I have looked in the textbooks to see if what my elders, what my family was saying was true. And yes, it was true. I'm happy they didn't lie to me. But everything that I'm teaching is what I first heard from my people first. Where I was able to back up the truth through historical documents and through history books. So we're going to start with the creation story, how we came to be. When I go into schools, when I ask them, how did Native Americans come here? How were Native Americans found here? It's usually the Bering Strait theory. Does anyone know what that is? No? So it's a scientific theory that says, when the world was together before Pangea happened and, the Ice Age and the world split, that people from Asia migrated to the United States since it was all together. And those Asians became the first Native Americans. And when the world split and Pangea happened, that is when Native Americans started to just travel and expand over the now new world, North America and South America. And that's what these kids learn. That is what is in the textbook. I've seen it myself. However, I do have my degree in archaeology too. And there has been no human archaeological evidence that has been found on the Bering Strait to this day. So it's really what it says. It's a theory, no evidence whatsoever. However, this theory is what is commonly taught. But what's not taught is our own creation story, our tribe's creation story, each tribe in specific regions' creation story. So I'm going to tell you ours today. So as you saw in the beginning, I go back to turtle. We call this world Turtle Island because we believe that we came from a turtle. So the creation story goes that the creator, we believe in one creator, one God. We're a monolithic religion. We just call God the creator. The creator first drew a circle. He made 4 paws or feet, a head and a tail, making a tortoise. The tortoise was lying in the body of water, and he would have remained in that water if the creator did not touch the tortoise and raise its back up high. Thus, when the tortoise rose its back and made dry land, which we call earth. And there in the middle of the tortoise was a tree. And the creator put his finger down again and touched the tree. And when he touched the tree, a sprout came. That sprout grew the first man. Then the man was alone. He was lonely and he was bored. So then the creator touched another tree. And a sprout came. The first woman came. And then all men were created. Sound a little bit familiar? Kind of like Adam and Eve? Yeah. So the word Lenape means grandfathers or original people. It is known that the Lenape people are kind of the grandfathers of Eastern Seaboard tribes, that many of these tribes we know kind of as the Cherokee, the Iroquois, the Oneida, the Mohawks. They came from us first. We were the original, and then they migrated and made their distinct tribes. Now that was centuries ago, but that is what we are known, and other tribes call us that, the grandfathers. It's also for our knowledge too and our wisdom. Historically, we were not hostile people. We were not mean people. We were very grounded with our wisdom, and we would not go into fights. And a lot of tribes looked up to us for that because we were able to stay grounded and to talk and to communicate without fighting. The word Nanticoke means tidewater people. So the Nanticoke people, again, were like the Cherokee and the Iroquois and the Oneidas, where they were a different tribe, and they went away, migrated. And they migrated to the Maryland area, Maryland, Chesapeake area. And it wasn't until the late 1750s that they came back up because they were being pushed out. So they came back up to their grandfathers and united with us once again. That's how our tribe became the Nanticoke Lenape tribe of families of both of them staying. So they are known as the Tidewater people because they were near the Chesapeake Bay and they had a lot of water attributes. They were great fishers, they were great craftsmen as well. So how my ancestors lived. This was hard for me to grasp, even still to this day, because it's very intricate. So our tribe, we are the Lenape people, the Nanticoke Lenape people, but we have 3 clans within our tribe. We have the Turtle clan, which is my clan, which we can see up there. We have the Turkey clan, and then we have the Wolf clan. These clans, as I kind of describe to people, are like your families, okay? You have your big family, you know, your grandma, your grandpa, your aunt, your uncle, your cousins, your immediate family, you know, mom, dad, sister, brother. So your immediate family would be your clan, and then your aunt and your uncle might be the Turkey clan, and your grandparents might be the Wolf clan. Kind of how you can, you know, picture it. And those clans have your family within it. If we look at this clan, which is my clan, it has names in it. Those are all of our family names within our clan. So I am a Reed, which is over here. I'm a Pierce, and I'm a Cuff. And I'm probably a lot more, it just keeps going in a circle the more back you go. But that's how we traced our genealogy too. And your clan was based off your mother's lineage. Everything within Lenape society was matrilineal. It was not patrilineal, which we are very used to with Eurocentric historical thinking. The women were the heads of society. They were the ones who told the men when they were allowed to go to war. They were also the ones who sparked relationships, and they could end relationships. It's a funny story that, you know, when women were tired of their husband, if they weren't, you know, being good husbands and they weren't going and catching deer, they would throw all their stuff outside the wigwam. And that's how you knew you were divorced. And you couldn't say no because the women were the head. You had to listen to them. So you just packed your stuff and go to another wigwam and hopefully they let you in. So our women were our heads. They still are our heads. We have clan mothers. And our clan mother is an elder woman of the tribe, and they are the ones that we go to, women, for spiritual guidance, for, you know, learning ways of women's roles in society. It was a very, very balanced life in Lenape world, pre-settlers. We also had 3 main dialect clans, the Munseen, the Unami, and the Unalachtigo. The Munseen people are people of the Stony Country, so that's up here, up North Jersey. You have the Nanticoke Lenape up here. They're another state recognized tribe in New Jersey. They have the dialect of the Munseen. The Unami dialect clan is where I'm from, South Jersey. That's how we talk. And the Unalachtigo, that was down in Delaware. However, that dialect is a dead dialect. It's no longer in use. And how I explain this is just how we talk. You know, people in Alabama don't talk the same way as us. They say the same words, but they don't talk the same way. Different dialects. So we have the same words, it was just how we talked it. And then obviously we lived in wigwams, which are these longhouses, not teepees. Teepees were out west. No teepees here. But we lived in long wigwams, and we have one of these at our tribal grounds, and it is a traditional wigwam. It's made out of, you know, wood bark, and it takes long hours to do. And it's very big. It's a mansion. They lived in mansions. There was usually a fire in the middle of the wigwam, and there was a hole at the top that served as a ventilation system. So they were nice and warm in their mansions. We also had an abundant food source. So obviously living in New Jersey, we have the ocean, we have the bay, we have lakes, we have rivers all throughout New Jersey. We also lived in Delaware too, northern Delaware. We lived in eastern Pennsylvania, and we lived in southern New York. So we were all around waterways. So we loved our seafood. We loved our fish. We loved our oysters. We loved our clams. We loved anything we could get our hands on. We loved our deer, our elk, our bears. We loved our berries. We loved our vegetables, our squash, our pumpkin, our corn. And the environment here. Obviously, we have 4 distinct seasons, which not many other places geographically can say that. You know, out west, they don't have winter. They don't really have a fall either, but we have that here. So they were able to get those 4 distinct seasons and all of that good harvest, that good crop on what we get in those 4 distinct seasons. So they were living a pretty lavish life, pretty good life. They loved it here. I do too. That's why my family didn't leave. So they were living a good life, but then as his story goes, the settlers came over. And we had good interactions with the settlers. Like I said, we were known as one of the friendliest tribes. We were not hostile at all. And we made immediate friends with a lot of settlers that are still good relationships with their descendants to this day. One of them is William Penn, the William Penn Treaty of 1682. Penn, Pennsylvania. He was kind of the founder of Pennsylvania. So he came over from a charter from King Charles II to establish a colony. And when he came over, he encountered the Lenapes because they were living there. And they became immediate friends. The Quakers were obviously nice people. And they negotiated this William Penn Treaty that gave William Penn the land in Pennsylvania to make his colony. So they were really nice friends, except when William Penn died, Thomas Penn, his son, was not so nice, not as nice as his father. And he wanted more land, and he didn't want to wait, and he didn't want to make a treaty. He just wanted it then. So he came up to the Lenapes and said, hey, I found this document. And it says that we own all this land right here. The Lenape said, let me see that document. And I don't think it's true. But the document said for as far as a man could walk in 1.5 days up the Delaware River Valley on the Pennsylvania side was Penn's land. So Lenape said, okay, now taken for granted, Lenapes could not read at this time, nor know what English like. Oh, I did something wrong. I was on a roll. But they didn't know what the language said, and they were trying to be nice. So they said, then let's walk these 1.5 days and give you whatever land that you walk. The key term is walk. Thomas Penn, with 3 runners, ran up the Delaware River Valley, where one of the runners actually died of exhaustion because he ran too much. And they took all of that land. And that is how the borders of New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania became the borders. And the Lenapes still to this day have not acknowledged that. It's called the Walking Purchase of 1737 because their idea of walking was obviously not the same as Penn's. And like our chief said, when you walk, in Lenape terms, you walk. If you get hungry, you maybe find a squirrel or something to eat. You sit down and rest, have a fire, maybe sleep for that one day, and that half day you wake up and walk. It's not running all day and night. So yes, that was called the Walking Purchase of 1737. And that was a sad loss for the people, for the Lenape people. However, Pennsylvania has been very open and nice about the whole situation. We just went up this past Tuesday, I think, where the William Penn Treaty actually happened, and we were able to do a ceremony there for it. So it just shows those kind of steps towards openness and inclusivity that we've always wanted. So we have John Smith. We might know the famous John Smith from Pocahontas. But he stated in his diary that, when he was surveying the Chesapeake Valley, that the Nanticoke people were very welcoming to him. That was at a time the Nanticokes were still down in Maryland. And he said that they were very welcoming and that they helped him survey the Chesapeake Bay. And you can find that in his diaries of the Chesapeake Bay, which is really amazing. So then we have the Dutch and the Swedish. they were not so nice. Not as nice as William Penn or John Smith to us. They came up here in North Jersey, where the Lenapes were, the Ramapo people, Lenape, and they wanted land, just like Thomas Penn. They didn't want to wait for it. So there was a Dutch governor called Governor Keith, and he was in the town of Pavonia, which is up here in northern New Jersey. It was an old town back then. And he decided that he was going to raid a Lenape village because he did not want to wait for a treaty. And this happened in, let me find my notes. I can't remember everything. This happened in 1643. It's called the Pavonia Massacre. And it's where Governor Keith and his men came in and they massacred hundreds of Lenape men, women, and children. And the Dutch citizens at this time were horrified because they had been friends with the Lenapes, as you know, we were a friendly tribe. And I just want to read this quote that one of the Dutch citizens said about this time. So he said, infants were torn from their mother's breast and hacked into pieces in the presence of their parents. Pieces were thrown in the fire and in the water, and other sucklings being bound to small boards were cut, stuck, and pierced and miserably massacred in a manner to move the heart of stone. Some were thrown in the river, and when the fathers and mothers endeavored to save them, the soldiers would not let them come on land, but made both parents and children drown. Now, I know that's very sad, but I think it's important to not only talk about the good, but talk about the bad, because that's in all throughout history with every culture. There's good and there's bad, and I think all of that needs to be talked about. So now on a good note, there's John Fenwick. I love talking about John Fenwick because he's the one who purchased the land that I live on, my family. So he purchased Cumberland County and Salem County. I live in Cumberland County. And he was a good friend of Lenape's. He wasn't bad. But he came over in March in 1673 on another charter to establish colonies, in which he did. And he made good friends with the Lenapes. And there's actually a tree that was in honor of him in Salem County. And my family actually got a piece of that tree because we were Lenape. And under that tree, it said is where he made the agreement with the Lenape people for the land. And we still have that piece of tree. And my mom loves it. But yeah, John Fenwick. Oh goodness. Yeah, you know how to do it. You're the mastermind. I believe in you.
I need to push buttons.
Okay. So next up we are going to talk about is herbs and ceremonial practices.
Why is it not?
Sorry. That's the problem with history. We're not technical people. We read books. I don't know how to do nothing on the computer.
I'm never having stuff. I'm gonna turn it to you.
You want to try that? Yeah. So the next one we're going to talk about is herbs and ceremonial practices. So herbs and holistic healing is very important in our tribe because not only do we use herbs and medicines for ceremonial context, but we use them for medicinal context as well. A lot of people don't know that, the first aspirin was it was looked from white willow bark, the tree. If you chew on white willow bark, it works as aspirin. And the settlers saw that. They kind of constructed it in their own way. And that's how they made the first aspirin. So a couple other things that we do is we drink sassafras tea because that helps purify our red blood cells when we're sick or, in different diseases where our blood cells are kind of diminished. Drink that, it'll help gain more. We also have red oak tea. This helps with severe cough, especially during this time, flu season, virus season. This is really good. We also have dried corn cobs. If you rub dried corn cobs on you, it helps to ease poison ivy. That's good to know as well for summertime. And I'm very grateful because a lot of these trees that help us medicinally are grown on our tribal grounds, and we're open to go anytime to just pick them. And I kind of think that the phrase tree hugger came from Native Americans. So I'm like, if people saw me just out here like with my trees, they probably would call me a tree hugger. But I'm very grateful that I can just go to my tribal grounds and to pick these leaves, to pick this bark, and to use it for myself, to help heal myself. We also have some ceremonial herbs that we use in different ceremonial contexts. We have sage, which is used to just purify your mind, your body, your spirit. Sage has become very popular in popular culture today. You can see it at Five Below, Walmart, Marshalls. I'll tell you, do not use that sage. It's not going to purify nothing. It's going to do the exact opposite. Don't use it. There's a lot of indigenous owned, stores on Etsy, in person that you can go and actually get the sage that is hand grown from either their farm or their people. That's what I would use, not Five Below. You also have sweetgrass. This is used to call on ancestors during ceremonies. So when we have our different ceremonies with our grandfather fire, that's what we call our fire. We would put sweetgrass into the fire to call on to whoever we want to talk to. We also have cedar that repels negative energy. So usually we put the cedar in first, so there's no negativity in the fire before we call on to our ancestors for prayer. We also have tobacco. Tobacco is used as a prayer to call on to specific ancestors, but it's also used to talk to the creator. So just like, people say their bedtime prayers, when I say mine, I have my tobacco in my left hand. You put it in your left hand because your left hand connects to your heart. And you pray. Easy as that. And then you throw it on the ground, usually outside. My mom will yell at me if I do it inside. But those are our ceremonial herbs that we use in different ceremonies. And then we also have different ceremonies. A lot of people think that, Native Americans were prehistoric people with prehistoric ceremonies, but we still do these ceremonies today. And I can do them in my jeans that aren't prehistoric, or I can do them with my cell phone in my back pocket. So it's just modernizing these ceremonies to fit our needs today. So first we have our naming ceremony. So long ago, our people had, Lenape names. But when settlers came over and when children were forced in residential schools, we were forced to give up these names and to get English names. So now we have private naming ceremonies where we're able to give our children Lenape names. These names are never to be said to anybody unless we feel safe to do so. That is that generational trauma. And then those names are what our creator calls us when we are praying to him. These names are given to you usually when you're about 1 to 2 years of age. An elder has to kind of mentor you and look at you to see how your personality is, to see how your spirit is, to see what name will match you. And anyone can give you your name as long as they are an elder and they are close to you. So I was able to give my little brother a name at the last naming ceremony because I was older than him and I was mentoring him and I could watch him. And it's a very beautiful ceremony. You can also get more than one name in your lifetime. If you have a big event or a big awakening, and you're 40 years old, you can get another name if an elder fits, to see you do that. It's a very beautiful thing, and it happens at our sacred circle. This is a picture of a wedding that's in our sacred circle. It's a circle that's sacred. Simple as that. It's surrounded by cedar trees in a circle on our tribal grounds. We also have our wedding ceremony. So these are pictures of my cousin's wedding ceremony. Obviously, you can see she's not in a big white gown. There's no bridesmaids or groomsmen, not in a fancy venue. So I love this because I know that I'm gonna save so much money on my wedding. But also it's very intimate, It's really about you and your partner, which is what it should be about, and your love. And it's performed in front of grandfather fire. You can kind of see the smoke, it's right there. And it's performed by our spiritual leaders, or those other people. And they unite you as one. And usually you cut your hand. Both husband and wife cut their hand and they bind their hand together with a cloth. That's supposed to combine you as one person. Then we have our big house ceremony. So this is a 2-week-long ceremony that happens in the middle of October. It was just a month ago. And that is our celebration of the new year. So our new year happens at the end of summer harvest and the beginning of when men usually go out and hunt. That was traditionally how our ancestors viewed the New Year, so that's how we celebrate it as well. And these 2 weeks are in our traditional wigwam, like I said, our mansion. It's big. And we're there from about 6 p.m. till 4 a.m., long time, all night. And we're getting taught these things that I'm teaching you now. This is what I've been taught in there by our elders, by people from other tribes coming in and giving us that knowledge. And we have different ceremonies that we do within those 12 nights. I was lucky to be one of the Oshkoshes this time, which means fire keeper, because for those 12 nights, 2 fires have to stay on the entire time. They cannot go out, which means that you are up doing that. So traditionally women aren't allowed to touch the wood in the fire, but we are allowed to stay there and wake the men up and hit them and say, wake up, you got to tend to the fire. So I was so happy to do that. And there's different ceremonies that women Oshkosh has to do as well that I was so grateful that I was allowed to do this time. So those are kind of our 3 main ceremonies that we do. I don't know how to go next, but you could try. So the next topic is our dances and our spirits. You might see powwows and you might see, you know, people go out into these powwows if you've ever been to one and dance different dances. A lot of tribes have different dances that they do, but there are also specific dances within each tribe that they only do for themselves. So one of our historical dances that we don't do anymore, I have to preface that, is our skeleton dance. This came from the Nanticoke people, and this is how they would honor their dead. So traditionally, or historically, when our people were getting removed and they had to leave, they didn't want to leave their elders who had passed away in the land that they weren't going to live on anymore. So they would dig them up and say, hey, we're going to come with us. And it's known that the Nanticotes, other people, would know that they were coming because they would smell the dead. I don't know if that's the reputation I would want, but that's what they had. So then they would perform the skeleton dance in honor. There was a woman who was the designated kind of scraper, she was called. She had to have long nails to scrape the flesh off. So there was only bones left. Yeah, that's why I have short nails. I'm not gonna do that. But the flesh was scraped off of the bones, and then the bones would be reconstructed to kind of look like a skeleton that you kind of see in the science class. And then they would do a dance in honor of their elders. And then they would traditionally bury their elders in front of their family's house, their wigwam. This dance, obviously, we don't do today. Can't do that. We do a dance kind of in honor of the dead, but we do not use bones. We use pictures. And it's a great way to honor them spiritually. We also have the jingle dance. This is a dance that any tribe does. At powwow, it's a big powwow dance. These are our jingle dancers right here. If you can see, they have little bells that are known as the jingles. These bells are made out of tobacco cans. A jingle dress dancer can have about up to 100, 200 bells on them, which weigh up to like 50 pounds. So you try dancing with that skirt in August. I danced jingle for about 2 months. I said, I'm done. Too hot. But this is a medicine dance. It was known that there was, story goes that there was this medicine man who was very sick. His granddaughter was very sick, and he prayed to the creator to heal his granddaughter. The creator said for this medicine man to make this dress with jingles on there and have the granddaughter dance in that dress and she would be healed. And as story goes, she was healed. So now it's a healing dance. You know, they do it if someone passes away and the family needs healing, or they do it when someone's sick and needs healing. But it's also a big powwow dance that you can see at powwows if you go. There's also traditional dance. This is men's traditional. This is a men's traditional person. Little regalia on. And this was a dance that showed how the men went into battle. So when they came back from battle, they wouldn't say, hey, this happened. They would go into the dance circle and dance and retell the story. And that is what they do today. And there's the hoop dance. This is one of the rarest dances that came from the Hopi people out in the Midwest. And it is also a healing dance. It's done with hula hoops made out of white willow bark. And it is said that when the hoop dancer passes between the hoops, that a prayer or a blessing is answered. And it's a very spiritual dance, and not many people do it. We only have one hoop dancer in my tribe because it is so rare. And then we have different spirits. As I said, we are a monolithic religion. We have one creator, but we also think of those angels, those 12 angels that help God. We also think that they're spirits that help our creator. So we have the thunder beings. The thunder beings are the beings that give us those storms, that rain that we need for our crops to grow, that we need for different things. So we thank those thunder beings when there's rain, for giving us rain for our crops to grow, to feed our grass. We also have our Mising. This is our Mising right here. He is the spirit of the forest. So he helps with getting game, with getting food. He helps our men on their vision quest. When the men go out and they need their visions and they're fasting for 3 to 4 days out in the wilderness, he makes sure that they're safe. He makes sure that the kids are in line. It is known that when the kids are being bad, he might show up and say, stop doing what you're doing. But I mean, if you have someone like this show up and he's about 12 feet tall, you're gonna stop what you're doing. So he is known to kind of be that babysitter, but it's a one-time babysit because they won't do it again. So those are kind of a little bit about our dances and our spirits.
That's the question of the dance. Is anyone allowed to watch, or does your tribe find it to be like, we're not here for your entertainment? This is a sacred dance, and therefore people are not welcome outside our tribe.
So our powwows, which I'll talk about them later, they're open to the public, so anyone can come and view them. And a lot of our dances that I just talked about, except for the skeleton dance, is done at those powwows. And we encourage people to come out and watch those dances. And we sometimes get people to be a part of them because, like I said, we're all family and everybody got to learn. But there are some dances that are just done during ceremony that we don't even talk about to the public. And those ones, the public will never know about because we don't talk about them. But when powwows happen, yes, we encourage people to watch them. Yeah. So the next little bit I'm going to talk about is kind of the struggles that not only my people have faced, but other tribal nations across the country. And I think it's very important for people to know what happened historically, because a lot of people did not read this in the history books. So first is residential schools. They're also called boarding schools. The closest one to us is the Carlisle Indian School, which was in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It was founded by military General Henry Pratt. He's known for the saying, kill the Indian, save the man. Residential schools were made to Americanize Native American children. They were most popular through the 1880s until like the 1950s. However, there are still residential schools today, and not many people know that. They were made to Americanize children. As we see in this picture, we have the men that are in their traditional clothing, their long hair, their feathers, and now they have short hair. They're in Americanized suits. They don't look too happy. So when you came to these residential schools, men were supposed to cut their hair immediately. Our men grow their hair out long. They still do to this day because it is a sign of the connection to the ancestors. The only time they're supposed to cut their hair is when there's been a death in the family. That is the only time. And then they grow it out until the next death. So they were made to cut their hairs. They were also made to speak English. They were made to have English names. They were made to forget their culture and to learn Americanized skilled jobs and trades, except the ones who made it back on the reservation, who didn't pass away, could not use those skills or trades because there was no jobs on the reservations for them to be hired at, because no services, no money was being set forth into the reservations that they were pushed in. These kids had a clothing allowance of one clothing pair a year, one pair of shoes a year. The shoes weren't based on your shoe size. They were based on the common shoe size of that, particular age. So they could have been too big or too small, but it didn't matter because you were that age, you were supposed to be that shoe size. The treatment at residential schools was very harsh. They had regular beatings. They had isolation rooms that people could be in days on end. They didn't have that much food. They didn't have adequate clothing. Like I said, they didn't get, winter coats or summer shorts. They had one pair of clothing. The ventilation system wasn't good. The heating and air conditioning, the sanitary system, the bathrooms was not good. So a lot of children unfortunately passed away due to starvation, disease, sometimes suicide, a number of things, except usually when these children passed away, they didn't get sent back home to their family. They were buried right there. And a lot of these families didn't know where their children were because they were kidnapped from the reservation and taken by the government. In Carlisle Indian School, there was 186 graves discovered, but it wasn't until 2016 that these graves of these children were actually distinguished and sent back to their tribes. So that just shows you. And I know this past year in Canada, there's been a lot of graves discovered at residential schools there. So it's very sad. And we had elders that, were at Carlisle. One of them just passed away. And you couldn't say you were Native American to him. He was traumatized. He didn't want to hear that he was Native American. He didn't want to hear that his grandchildren were Native American because he was scared that they were still going to get taken. Because like I said, these are still in place today. And a lot of people ask me, how are these things still in place? How are these schools still here? And the simple fact of it is that the government still doesn't like us. And that's the simple answer. The government still does not like us. And they still do this to us.
So I skipped a slide by accident. Maybe.
Oh, I did have one that was taken off.
Okay, cool.
They're good. Like I thought. So then we have the paper genocide. So not only were our children being taken and being forced to forget their Native American culture, but the government was trying to forget Native Americans altogether. They didn't want Native Americans to exist at all. On birth certificates, you were either Black or you were white, or you were called a Moor, which meant more Black than white. A lot of our Delaware people that are from our Delaware Nanticoke tribe, a lot of their birth certificates say Moor on it. This is of my great grandmother. And as you can see, it says Negro. She's the same color as me, well, was, before she passed away. Also the census. The census is, the 10-year survey of the US population. In 1790, when the first census was done, until about the 1860s, Native Americans were not accounted for. We were either Black or white. There was no Native Americans existed during that time, I guess, to them. From the 1860s to about the 1940s, your race was determined on the census by a paper bag. If you were lighter than the paper bag, you were white. If you were darker than the paper bag, you were Black. And if you were just the right color of paper bag, then you could be Native American. And this is obviously very not right, because there was a lot of different skin colors of Native Americans because of just the mixing and the fact that we weren't outside as much as we were of our ancestors. We weren't getting that tan. So we have a bunch of different skin colors. I mean, my uncle, he's very dark. You wouldn't think he was my uncle, but he's blood, and my mom's very light. I'm like, you sure you're brother and sister? But they are. But it's just that different, mixture. And a lot of the skin colors have affected, Native Americans to this day on their identity and how they self-worth themselves as Native Americans. Also, during the 1940s is when blood quantums became big in Native American culture. Blood quantums are what we have to give the government when we are born to show how much of a percent of Native American we are. The only things that have to give their blood quantum to the United States are dog, horses, and Native Americans. So that kind of shows you the category that they put us in. We still have to do this to this day. We also get cards when we're born that have our number, Native American number. And we have to use this to get into colleges. We are the only race, ethnicity that has to use a card with a number to show our identity, because they do not want us to be here, because they don't want to give us funding. So the less blood quantum someone has, they can determine whether they have to give that tribe a certain amount of funding or not. And this is just a sad truth. And it wasn't until 1924 that Indians became citizens with the Indian Citizenship Act that we were allowed to vote finally. So, you know, from when we won the Revolutionary War in 81, I think, until 1924, we weren't allowed to vote. And it wasn't until 1978 that we were allowed to practice our culture and our religion freely. So all those dances, all those ceremonies that I talked about, we had to do them in private or we would be put in jail. 1978, my mom was born in 1973. So I think about those years in her young life where she wasn't allowed to practice her culture freely. It wasn't that long ago. All this stuff that happened isn't that long ago. So I just always think about that. I'm thankful that I was able to spend my adolescent years, you know, practicing my culture and dancing my dances. So the American Indian movement is my favorite thing to talk about. This happened at the same time as the civil rights movement, as the feminism movement. However, it is not talked about in history books. You know, we have to, you know, I had to do projects on, you know, civil rights leaders, on feminist leaders, on Hispanic American leaders in that movement, but I never learned about the AIM leaders, Clyde Bellacourt, Dennis Banks, George Mitchell. You know, no one learns about them. However, they were very instrumental. They were kind of the prototypes, the beginning of the Pan-Indianism movement that's still happening today. There are role models. They occupied Alcatraz Island for a year. A year. I never learned about that until I was in college. A year. And they made it into a home, into a society for their homeless Native American population to have a home, to work. It was a full-on village at Alcatraz Island. No one knows about that. They also had their Trail of Broken Treaties. This was kind of modeled after Martin Luther King's March on Washington. They modeled a lot of their stuff after the civil rights and the Black Panthers, which is such a big thing. And they occupied the Bureau of Indian Affairs building in Washington, D.C. for a week because the Bureau of Indian Affairs was caught stealing our land, stealing our children, stealing our money during this time. So they got all the paperwork. They threw it out. They said, look what we found. And it wasn't until President Nixon agreed to meet with them that they unoccupied the Bureau of Indian Affairs building. And because of them is why we have the Self-Determination Act that President Nixon implied. Because of them is why we as people now can practice so freely, because they did so much for our people. One of the biggest events was Wounded Knee. There was a Wounded Knee in the 1890s, but there was a Wounded Knee also in the 1970s. And this happened on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And it's when the AIM leaders, along with the Lakota people and many other tribal nations, the Sioux people as well, they were in a battle with the government. A long, months-long battle. And the government basically cornered them into their own reservation, which, first of all, a reservation, that's tribal land, that is not owned by the government. It's kind of like its own little country. So the government isn't really even allowed to put their forces on reservation land. However, they came in and they starved them out. They shot at them. There's a great book called Lakota Woman by Mary Crow Dog. She had her baby at Wounded Knee. She's the only woman to have her baby at Wounded Knee. And she married a big AIM leader called Leonard Crow Dog. And that event, you know, if you have time to read that book, I definitely recommend it because it tells you the ins and outs of Wounded Knee. But American Indian movement, it was such a big movement that's not talked about when we talk about these 1970s social movements that should be talked about, because it really was that movement that helped Native Americans today be confident to say that they are Native American. So now we have current issues today that our people are still facing. So one is the drug and alcohol abuse and addiction, especially on reservations. Alcohol is called the white man's curse to our people because it was brought over by the settlers to get us incoherent and feeling good so that we could give them land, give them food, give them trade. But it's still a curse today. And it affects a lot of reservations, and a lot of reservations that are near Mexico get in and out with the drug cartel. My family, they live on the Pueblo reservation out in New Mexico. So they're right there with the drug cartel. And it's prevalent coming in and out. And because of the lack of social programs, of funding, of services on reservations, there's really nothing and no hope for those people. It's hard to get out. And the only thing that is there for them is alcohol and drugs. It's a very sad thing. There's also the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. This is a big issue today, especially on reservations. A lot of our women are going missing, and their cases are not being looked at. Their cases are not on the news. And a lot of evidence that is in the Bureau of Indian Affairs building is not being looked at. It's been proven that it's being kept on the shelves, not looked at. This is why a lot of women on the Eastern Coast, they don't really go out to reservations. I'm not allowed to go out to my family's reservation because my mom's scared that I'm not going to come back. And I fear every day for my cousins out there because I don't know if they will be safe tomorrow. It's a big, just horrible thing that's happening. There's also poor housing on reservations, as we can see in this picture. Reservations have been comparable to third world living conditions. Like I said, they were forced on reservations, but the funding, the services, the money that they were promised was never given to them. So they were kind of left there, and they still are. And it's very, very hard when you are in a poverty setting to get out. Where I live, Cumberland County, it's a very poverty-stricken place. I see it every day, and luckily I was raised in the smallest good area of town where I am not in that, but I go 2 minutes down the road, I can see how they're living, and it breaks my heart. But when you don't have those services and those funding and those people and that education to get you out of someplace, it's very, very hard to get out. Thank you. So now we go to specifically Lenape and their struggle with recognition within the state. So in 1982, the Nanticoke Lenni-Lenape tribe was officially recognized by the state as a state recognized tribe. However, from about the 1990s until 2015, their state recognition was constantly dethroned or unaffirmed by the state, by state officials, saying that they didn't say that they were a state recognized tribe, even though it was a resolution that they put out to the public. So in 2015, my tribe filed a lawsuit in the state of New Jersey because during this time, they had lost all the funding, all the federal funding, all the jobs that they had created, all the grants, because the state kept saying, oh, they're not a recognized tribe. And, you know, we need money to support our tribe, to have our tribal lands, to have our ceremonies, to give jobs to our people. So they were taking away that from us. So we filed a lawsuit in 2015. In 2018, we won that lawsuit because the state had no evidence to back up their claim. Their only claim was that they were racist, that they were scared we were going to build a casino in partnership, you know, in competition with Atlantic City because we live close to there. That was their only reasoning. And luckily my master's thesis, my 80-page paper is on this. So if you want to read it, you can. I'm not going to go into that much detail because I do there. But luckily we won it and we were rewarded that money that we had lost in those almost 30 years. And we're still using that money today because once we got it in 2018, 2019 was COVID, and COVID's still here, you know. So we were able to fully, you know, use those funds at that time because COVID halted the world. But now we are lucky enough to start using that fund. We're starting to build a museum on our tribal land, our own museum that'll house our artifacts, that'll tell our stories, that will have our people running it, which I'm very excited for. So then present day things that we're doing, like I said, powwows. So there's a lot of things that you guys can come to and see and support our people, to support the Lenape people and the 3 recognized tribes in New Jersey. And the first is powwows. So they are a festival that are open to the public where you can see our ceremonial dances, you can eat our food. We revolve everything around food, that's what we say. We have some pretty good food. And you can also see native arts and crafts. It's such a fun thing. There's a lot up here. My tribe's powwow is the first weekend of June at, you know where Cowtown is, it's way South Jersey. But it's like a rodeo place that's very famous where I live. That's where it's at. It's across from there. But there's a lot of them up here. There's a lot in New York as well that happen. And then there's also museums that are, you know, accepting and having us come in and talk, like today. I'm also working with the Trent House Museum in Trenton, New Jersey, to create educational videos on Lenape culture that'll hopefully be in the curriculum next year for students to learn about us. There's also colleges and universities now creating Indigenous studies programs and just opening up conversations about Native American, you know, recognition and respect in history. And I'm so happy to be a part of this stuff and to, you know, be able to come out and speak to people about my people, because it truly makes my heart happy. So then how you guys can be an ally. First, showing up to stuff like this, learning more and more. That's the best way. Also to tell others, you know, go tell your friends, your family about us, even to look us up on Facebook or, you know, Instagram or social media to learn more about us. Also to contact your state and local representatives to say, you know, what are you doing for these issues? What are you doing for these causes? How can we be an ally? Because believe it or not, there's a lot of politicians that still don't know Native Americans exist, and I've met them. It's sad. So just being that, you know, advocate to send an email outside from a Native American, you know, because sometimes it's good to have outsiders email them as well. And also to just, you know, if you are in talks with, you know, schools, if you have a presence within a school system where you live, to talk more about, hey, what are you doing for Native American Heritage Month? Or, hey, what are you doing just to educate kids on Native Americans? You know, that's a great way, because I know me and a lot of others in my tribes, we go into schools and we just talk like I did today. Not about some of the things, because those kids don't need to hear about that, but about the fun things. So just being that advocate in school systems as well. So Wanishi, that means thank you. Thank you for your time today. I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope I didn't talk too much and bore you, but I'm so happy to have been here to talk to you guys. Wanishi.
How did you learn the language? Your family?
A little bit of my family, but also there's another tribal member. She's Nanticoke. She's down in Delaware, but she's a PhD student in Rutgers right now. Her name's Corral Hall, and she's actually getting her degree to revitalize our language. So she's been teaching me so much. She's writing a book right now of the language. She's a huge language advocate, and I've learned so much just in this past year from her specifically. But yeah, throughout the year, it's just my family saying certain things that I pick up on. But, you know, as a kid, I didn't really like appreciate it as much as I do now. I'm like, oh, what is she saying? But now I appreciate it more, and I want to, you know, talk it more and more.
I grew up near Nanticoke, Pennsylvania, which is near Mauchunk, which is now called Jim Thorpe. His tribe was Oklahoma, but he ended up in the Carlisle Indian School.
Yep. He was a good athlete. And
his story is a sad story. But I recommend Mauchunk to anybody who wants to learn more.
Thank you.
Question from the audience online?
Go for it.
You can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, was there a removal movement from the East Coast to Oklahoma, similar to the Trail of Tears at the Cherokee?
Yes, there was around like the 1730s to the 1750s. The Lenape were moved, or they moved themselves up to northern Canada, well, southern Canada. So we have a Lenape tribe in Canada, but we also have a Lenape tribe in Oklahoma. They're called the Delaware Indians, and they were also removed from us. They are a part of us. They are our family, but they're out in Oklahoma, and they're actually federally recognized out there, which is amazing for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How much of your family have you contacted? And so, like, did you do any gene like 23andMe or anything like that, where you been able to locate more relatives?
Yeah. So actually and I did Ancestry, and our tribe is not on there because a lot of Native American tribes are not on there because they are not federally recognized. And even federally recognized tribes, they're not on there. So it actually told me that I was a Delaware slave. Yeah, I said that. Part of it's true. But yeah, but luckily a lot of my family, my genealogy, because we have to trace our genealogy back in order to get our recognition for the state and for us to get our membership for the tribe. So you have to trace it back. And a lot of my family, we were the ones that stayed here. We didn't go and, be forced away. So a lot of my family I live with right now. We all live within like 20 minutes of each other, and it's been like that forever. And I was lucky enough to know my great grandmother and a lot of my elders that have passed away because they did live for a very long time. So I got to know them. And my mom tells me stories of, elders all the way back. But all of my people, my genealogy are all stayed here, which I love to say, like when people say, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from right here. Did not move at all, we stayed, which is great.
Are there any other questions? In person or on Zoom?
Yes, I have a question. I'm on Zoom.
Go for it.
Okay, hi. So my 10th great grandmother, she lived with the Lenni-Lenapes in the 1600s. And I would really like to gather more information about the Lenni-Lenapes in the 1600s. I want to know about what languages they spoke and what it was really like there. So do you have any information for me where I could get more information?
I would definitely say look at George Fox's diary, William Penn's diary, John Fenwick's diary. They talk a lot about our people. There's also a book, I know his last name's Harper, but it's called Friends of South Jersey. He also talks about that as well, about the 1600s. But they spoke Lenape language. Since the Lenapes were the first, like I said, grandfather tribe, a lot of people think that the Algonquin language was the language of the East Coast. However, Algonquin language came from Lenape, so it should be called Lenape language. So it is that Lenape language. It depends on where your grandmother lived. If she would have had like the Unami, the Munseen, or the Unalachtigo, like
yeah,
dialect.
So her ship ran aground in the Atlantic Highlands.
Okay.
That's where, yeah, and she lived alone there for 5 years with the matrilineal society, and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely look at those books though, because those books I learned a lot from, just them like recounting everything about our people during that time.
Thank you.
Thank
Wanishi.
Yeah, good.
All right, if there's no other questions, we'll get everything wrapped up. Thank you all for coming out here. Thanks everyone on the Zoom for coming out as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to the museum.
Yes, thank you.
Great. And to you.
Thank you.